Hi, my name is Lexi Setzler, and this semester I had the opportunity to observe at Glenrose Elementary. When arriving to the school, I learned how loving and caring all the teachers and staff were. There were so many people helping students out of cars, and the teachers were all outside their classrooms saying good morning to the students. My mentor teacher had a greeting chart on the door, and every student got to pick how they wanted to be greeted by her. I love that idea and want to include that in my future classroom. The first thing I noticed were her procedures on the wall. She told me that over the years she has made adjustments, but overall, the ones she has are great. Over here, you can see her good morning procedures, and there are hug, high five, wave, handshake, and fist bump. And she allows every student to pick one of these before entering the classroom. It's kind of like their hello. And if somebody usually doesn't pick one, it probably means that they're upset because everyone gets really excited to do these. And if that's the case, she will usually take them to the side and talk to them and see if everything is okay, because she wants every student to enter her classroom in a good mood, and she wants to make sure that everyone is doing well for the day. And over here is her classroom, and it's very well organized. So throughout my visit, I got to observe many things. One major part is classroom management. To me, classroom management is a healthy classroom to foster student learning and cooperation. You could definitely see this in my mentor teacher's classroom. The room was pretty organized and clean, which went along with consistency like in our first year teacher book. This also it showed the expectations of the classroom. Some procedures were posted on the wall that she wanted her students to adhere to. So as you can see, back here were the backpacks, so everything was clean and organized and there wasn't a bunch of stuff on the floor. Over here in this corner was a book cart, and then this was the books that she would post for the seasons, or if she had some funny books that she wanted to post. And so when it was around Thanksgiving time, she had Thanksgiving books and Halloween books. And so this is something that students can just choose from. And then their desks are in groups of 5. This is for collaborative learning and group work, and just always being together, because she doesn't like them just being individual desks with no talking. And she also usually has all the chairs pushed in. They got up really fast to go look at something over here. But that is because she doesn't want anybody tripping over the chairs. She has some special needs students, and one that sits right here in the front. She doesn't want him falling or anything. So she does have that layout. These were some other procedures that the teacher had. She had the sharp and unsharp pencils in the bucket, and the sharp ones were on top and the unsharp ones were on bottom. She would usually sharpen these at the end of class or before class started. And so the class would have a whole bucket of sharp pencils, so nobody would be using the pencil sharpener. I only heard the pencil sharpener go once, and that was because the bucket ran out. Also, over here, she had a boys and girls restroom sign, and I actually really like this, and will probably incorporate this in my classroom, because when they needed to go, if she was talking or doing an assessment with somebody, this was something that they could just pick up, and they would lay the pass on their desk and they would leave quietly. This was so that if she needed that person and she looked up and saw the pass on their desk, she knew where they were. And also there was only one girl and one boy sign. So that left it so there can't be multiple girls in the bathroom talking or multiple boys in the bathroom talking. Only one of them could go at a time. There was a poster for job assignments, which had the door holder, the lights, and the errands. These were changed every week, and the students knew whoever was picked that week needed to do their task. They took these tasks very seriously. This kind of went with rules and procedures because they knew what they had to do each week when they went over this at the beginning of the year. Another thing she had was the today's objectives. She normally would change these every day. Sometimes she would forget, but I really liked this, and I'd never seen it in another classroom. And I liked it because it allowed the students to see what was going to go on in the day. And when they were wondering what they were going to do in math or science, they could turn around and see. Sometimes students have anxiety, and I feel like this really helped that. Here was another procedure. It was an attention getter. These my mentor teacher taught at the beginning of the year, and all the students went over them. So now they have them memorized. These help when the teacher needs to grab the attention. She will say one, and the class will say what comes next. There were some more that she came up with, but these were the main ones that she made in the beginning of the year. And I really like all these because they're really cute, and they just they make the class engaged and get their attention. Here were some books that were read for free time. Most of the class does read on the iPad. Around 95% of the class does. There are hardcover books, and there are a few students that like to read them. This book in particular, a student was struggling, and she was just kind of sitting over in the corner, and so me and her went over there, and we picked out a book because I found out that she loves Hawaii. So we found this book, and she ended up reading the whole thing, and she talked to me about it the next week I came to visit. But these are some of the things that they would do after they finished an assignment, or just during regular free time, they would get to just read. This is the least effective thing that went on when I was at Glen Rose, and it is the worksheets. Glen Rose, I have found, is pretty worksheet oriented, and all the teachers do this, but this was something that they had their bell work. When they would first come in, it would be a spelling or vocab sheet for the week, and every single day they would have these bell works that they would come in and do the worksheet. Here's another worksheet that they would do. They would usually do a bell work and then read, and then she would either hand out 1 or 2 pages of worksheets, and they would do that, and then they would go on to learn their new lesson and do another worksheet. And this was just something that I really didn't like. I do think some worksheets are okay some of the time, but my whole 2 hours I was there once a week, they were just doing worksheets the whole entire time. And that's not very engaging. It doesn't incorporate collaborative learning or any kind of engagement. And I just feel like students get really bored really easily, and they're not learning when they're just doing worksheets all day. So this is something that I found the least effective, and I would not incorporate it in my classroom. This is something that I loved, and I feel like a lot of teachers are doing this now, but it is Kahoot. And this was something that the students were super engaged with, and was something that really checked for their understanding of the lesson. And so this lesson, the TEK was synonyms, so that's what they learned. And usually the teacher will do 10 to 15 questions and pop this Kahoot up, and they will play. The only thing I would say is I would separate my students a little bit more because there was some cheating going on, which you're going to see that anywhere. But I would just have it not a huge group, maybe have them sit in their desk. But they loved this, and it showed the teacher their scores at the end. So if a lot of students were struggling, she would know to go over this lesson again, which I find very interesting. Here is her reading desk, and it's a horseshoe desk, and they have the little pillows and baskets down here. This was something that she would do for formative assessment. She would call students up to read. This was for collaborative learning. And I think the students liked this a lot because they were able to engage with each other better and the teacher. And this is something that she would do for reading time. She would do it for one-on-one work with the student, or if she wanted a few students up there to finish homework or work on them if they were absent. And while she was doing all these assignments and readings, the other students would be reading on their laptop or their iPads or just books. And the students, I found out, really liked reading to her. These are some of the daily books that would be read. They had a new company this year, so all of this was new to her. But around every day, they would read a new book. And every time I would get there, she would hand me some books and I would get to take groups out into the hallway so I could read with some of the students and she could read with some of the students. And they loved reading to me. And I really liked this way of reading because each student would read like a page or a paragraph depending on how long the section of the book was. And the students were really engaged because they liked hearing their other classmates read. And I really liked the formative assessment that went along with this because it was a lot of group activity. And I really liked that the students were actually engaged. It wasn't like the teacher was up there reading a book to them, because I felt like when this happened, they were more engaged than just sitting there and listening. They actually got to read and then listen to their friends read. Here's an activity that she would do. Usually when she taught a new lesson, she would have the whiteboard and they would come sit around. And I think this was really effective because instead of them seeing it from like some of the two desks that were farthest out, it was kind of hard to see all the way up to the front of the whiteboard. So I really liked this because they got a closer look, and she would describe the new TEK, which this week they had to learn nouns, and then she would write sentences out and talk about nouns, and she would underline them, and then she would erase this and write new words and have the students raise their hand and tell her what nouns that they can pick out, and they would talk about it. If one of them was wrong, they would talk about it and discuss in a good way, like why that wouldn't be it. And this kept most of the students engaged. And it also worked on collaborative learning with the whole group, and they would discuss together as a group different nouns. They would list nouns. It was a really cool idea that she had. This was something that the class did as well. It was a word web assignment. And over here on the whiteboard or the smart board was the teacher's word web. And the story they read was about a talking spider. And so she made characters, and then she picked one of these characters and she picked the pencil. And so then she made like another word web out of the pencil, and it was going to be things that the pencil was going to do or say. And so over here is a word web that I worked on with a student, and the item that she picked was ball, and because she loved baseball. And so she was going to write about how when the baseball hits the ball says ouch. And when it flies through the air, it feels so good. So that was a story that she was going to incorporate with hers. But this is something that all the students did. And then after they made their word web, they discussed in their groups which one they were going to choose and why, which goes along with cooperative learning and group activities. This was a really cool day that I came. They did a drill for if somebody came in the school, and they made an announcement so the teachers all knew what to do. They had these on the top of their door, which was kind of cool. And they shut their door and lock it, and then just slide these into there's like a lock on the door and on the wall. And so just in case if there is ever an intruder and they break through the lock, they can still not open the door because of this special little tool. And it looks like a crowbar that just goes in between. And I've never seen this at school, so I really liked that all the classrooms had this just for extra precaution. I also like how calm the classroom was. Even though it was a drill, she wasn't freaking out and telling the students that this was for this. The students already knew what was going on, and they were very calm and collective during this whole process, and I really liked that. Here is a writing that somebody did, and the thing about this writing is they had a 3-day weekend, and when they came back, she told everybody to write about what they did on their 3-day weekend, and she said everybody did something. And I find this not as effective. We learn in Miss Henson's class that sometimes people don't do things over breaks, and sometimes people don't do things on the holidays. So it's really hard to say something so vague and have them write about it. For example, this person, all he said was on a Friday, I just watched my phone. On Saturday, I played video games. And on Monday, my sister had to run 2 miles. Like, this boy, he did not know what to write. He was trying so hard to think of anything he could write. He wrote 3 sentences of just like something he could figure out. And so I feel like in a writing assignment, you should have the student have like a few things that they could choose from. So then they have more of an opportunity to write about what they want to write about instead of just picking something that the teacher said. And in this case, like, the student didn't know what to write. So I feel like this is just not as an effective way to use their writing time, because they are in 2nd grade. And if he wrote about his favorite video game, he probably could have wrote about way more than what he wrote on his 3-day weekend, because he just didn't do anything and he just had a hard time. And I encountered about 5 people this day that could not figure out what to write. This is something cool. This was when the state came and she had to record this lesson and send it to them. She did voiced and unvoiced words. And this class was very organized and not very fun because she was doing it for the state. And so she wrote some words up here on the board that she read from a book the prior day to this lesson. And then they came to the whiteboard and she already had these words written out. And all the students said the voiced and the unvoiced word. And then they did an activity where they stuck sticky notes. She would give them a word and they would stick the sticky notes down here if it was a voiced word or an unvoiced word. But it was really cool to see all the teachers get ready to be recorded for state and see how they taught differently. This was the last thing that I came in for, and I'm so happy I came in for this. They did Around the USA, and so all the 2nd grade teachers had a different place in the U.S. that they would talk about. Her classroom is Mount Rushmore. So when they came in, they watched 2 videos. One was an informational video, and the other one was like a funny song that the people of Mount Rushmore would sing. And then they got to draw this little mountain of Mount Rushmore and do a penny scratch or a coin scratch. And then after they got finished doing that, she read a short little book about Mount Rushmore before they had to switch to the next class. And each classroom was different. I really wanted to go into each different classroom and see how all of them were set up, but I had to help in this classroom, so I wasn't able to do that, but I still had a really fun time. I got to see all the different classrooms come in and how they all behaved. This was really good because the students would talk about Mount Rushmore to each other. They were very engaged. She asked questions at the end of the book, which checked for understanding. And this was just a cute little formative assessment that all the teachers did just to teach all the students about different things around the USA. And that is everything that I did and learned at Glenrose. I had an amazing time. I learned a lot of things. I learned some things that I wouldn't do, but most of the stuff, most of the procedures and seating arrangement and techniques that she used, I really did like. I love the amount of formative assessment she used. I did see some summative assessment. They did some, one test when I was there and a few quizzes, but most of it was formative. And for the most part, students were always engaged in her teaching because she did a lot of collaborative learning. And so that was what I learned at Glenrose. Thank you.